into the fire, and they are burnt. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit, so shall ye be my disciples. As the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love. If you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandment and abide in his love. And it's very good to read the word of the Lord. It may sound monotonous, but in the beginning is the word, and the word is with God, and the word is God. Yeah. So and Jesus has said in Matthew to the tempter, in Matthew 4, verse 4, he said that the tempter said to him to turn these stones into bread. And Jesus said that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. So now we need a messenger who hears the mouth of God to be able to relay the word. Okay? So let me get back on track here. So Hannah, in order to petition the Lord and to have the fulfillment of her prayer requests, she had to pray to the Lord. She had to remember who she's praying to. And she also petitioned the Lord in the earlier verse where she says, in verse 11, she said, "And remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but will give unto thine handmaid a man child. Then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head." So Hannah is saying to the Lord, remember me and forget me not. Yeah. So in order to pray successfully to the Lord, Hannah had to remember the Lord too. She had to be in remembrance of the Lord. As Hannah prayed, she was in remembrance of the Lord. She had to be in remembrance, remembering his quality, that he is a loving Lord. He is pure and righteous and merciful. He is full of compassion, loving, tender, loving kindness. He is graceful, merciful, he's loving, he's kind and tender, he's compassionate, he's merciful and graceful. All right. Hannah, as I said, had to align her thoughts. She had to master her thoughts in the way of the Lord, because the Lord spoke to the prophet Isaiah and he said, "My thoughts are higher than yours, and my ways are higher than you." So Hannah had to get into that alignment. She had to come into the meditation of the heart. Let the meditation of the mind and I have to look at go back to the Psalms here. So she had to meditate in the word. She had to align her heart, master her words and her thoughts, and be in the remembrance of the Lord, okay, and all his ways. In other words, she had to take her mind off the adversary and remain focused in the word of the Lord, remain focused in the love of the Lord, remain focused on who the Lord is. He is her maker. He is her beginning and her end. He knows her end at the beginning. Yeah? She is to rest in the Lord. She is to keep faith. She is to keep loyalty in the Lord. She is to be still in the Lord. She has to come into a surrender and into an obedience and a trust, knowing that he is the master of all. Okay? And without him, she cannot even come into being. So, however it may seem to her, she has to turn it over to the Lord, you see, and be in his peace and his righteousness and in his justice, okay? So that's what I'm saying about being in remembrance of the Lord. She had to just stay focused in the Lord to be able to overcome the adversary, but more to get that fruition, to become fruitful and to get her heart's desire. And to become whole as well, you see. So, so this is what this is how Jesus was able to overcome, by knowing his inheritance, knowing his rights, knowing he's a messenger, and knowing the word of the Lord, and that it shall come to pass. But the best thing here is when Elkanah says to his wife in chapter 23, do what seemeth thee good. Do what seemeth thee good. Yes, good. Tarry until thou have weaned him. Only the Lord establishes his word. See? Only the Lord establishes. And this is what I was saying, that when the Lord gives us a word, we are to rest in him, because he shall be the one to establish it. He shall be the one to see that his word shall come to pass. He shall auction it. He shall action it. And he shall see that it comes into its manifestation, or that it into its fruition. So if the Lord has given you a message to bring to Pharaoh, by gum, bring that message, because the Lord, like Moses, will see that his word shall come to pass. And we can rest in the Lord, that we don't have to do the work. You see, we don't have to fight the battle. We call upon the name of the Lord. He will take up our battles, because vengeance really belongeth to him. Because you see how the serpent beguiled Eve yesterday, right? And the Lord came and put a word against the serpent. He said, yes, I'll give you some power, but ultimately all power belongs to me, because I am the one that's giving you the power. See, not the serpent. I am the one that will give the serpent the power. Okay, and though he may bruise the seed, but the seed will crush his head. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, that there is a spiritual warfare going on right now, and we are to be aware that we remain in the remembrance of the Lord. And then it takes me back to knowing that the young shall be blessed over the old, meaning that we're now entering into the second covenant, and we're coming into the promises of the Lord, that he shall redeem us from the perils of the enemy, from the perils of the adversary. So the adversary is being cut down as I speak to you. They're being bruised in the head. They're being crushed on the head right now. And we enable it when we stay in the consciousness, in the awareness of the Lord. But we cannot do it on our own. We have to pray to the Lord that he will establish his word in us. Okay? And really, what I wanted to read this morning, I wanted to go on to this section here where it says that in verse 19, and it says that or I'll go to verse 18. It says, and she said, let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat. So she got divine revelation, and her countenance was no more sad. And they rose up in the morning early and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. Okay, so I wanted to talk about, and they worshipped before the Lord. You see, and they worship, and the Lord has spoken through Jesus in the prophet, in the Gospel of Saint John, that and that's, if we go on to chapter 4 there, he talks about coming. The Lord wants us to come to him in spirit and in truth, and to worship him. And that's, if I just flick over to chapter 4 of the Gospel of Saint John, and my eye catches 21. Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when you shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship, you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Yeah? And so that I wanted to sort of start off the reading from that verse 19, chapter 1 of the first book of Samuel. But hey, as I began to read the first chapter, it spiraled me to talk about the young shall be blessed over the old. And that means we're leaving the old covenant and coming into the new. All things shall pass away. and we shall come into new. And that's my message on the climate change, that the climate is changing. We're leaving the old, cold, harsh, evil climate, and we're coming into the warm, love, comfort, and joy climate. Okay, so the poetical words aren't flowing right now. So that's the essence of why the young shall be blessed or rewarded over the old, because we're going to forget the old things, it shall pass away. And as it was in the beginning, so it shall be at the end. And as Martha said to Jesus, let me just read what Martha said, because it's best to just say exactly as the Holy Scripture says it. Let's not change the word, because the word is God. And so Martha said unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Yes. And Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life, and he that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. So Jesus saying, when you come into my consciousness, or you come into the awareness of me, Christ, the Messiah, the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven, he says, I am, yes, and the life, he that believeth in me, as if though he were dead, yet shall he live. Okay, so it's telling us, the Bible is telling us that we are about to enter. It's telling us that there's a promise of the seventh day rest. Okay, and it's telling us what it will be like, but we have to come into that preparation. And Jesus in the scriptures is saying that you're coming into my consciousness. You're shifting into a higher calling of me. You're going to know me more. Okay, but we have to be able to worship in spirit and in truth. Okay, and that's another story talking about the woman at the well, because Jesus has said to her, the husband that you're with, the man that you're with, is not your husband. He's not your husband. And Jesus is speaking about where we are today, that the people are going to church and they're worshiping and praising, but they're not praising the true husband. Yes, they're under the empires that Daniel spoke of, and right now they're under the Gentile spirit, but under the British and the Russian Empire. That's who they're worshiping. They're not worshiping the true God as yet, but that will mean a whole changeover of the earth, a whole paradigm shift taking place. All right, now, so I thank you all for your good and kind attention. This is Joycelyn Linton coming into the higher calling. And let me just try and sort of sum it up now of what word came through. So my intention was to look at, and they rose up in the morning early and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house to Ramah. Right? And Jesus talks about, in my Father's house are many mansions. So it means that the rose up, I'm going to say it means that we have to come into an ascension process. We have to go through a process to be ready for the coming of the Lord on the earth. And in the morning, so that's the start of a new day. Yes, that's my interpretation here. Okay, it's the start of the rising of the light, the new light. And they rose up early, sunrise. And in the start of the new day, we have to be able to worship the Lord. And what did the Lord say in the Gospel of St. John 4? As I flick over there quickly, he says, ye worship ye know. So he says, God is a spirit. So that's chapter 4, verse 24. And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Okay. And and they rose up in the morning, meaning that we have to go through an ascension process. We have to ascend, come higher in ourselves, come into the higher calling. Yes. So we have to come higher into ourselves, and that's by the call of the Lord. The Lord will enable that in us, and then we come into our spiritual being, and now we can worship before the Lord. Right, and return and come to their house to Ramah. Okay, and I'm going to say the house is our temple, our bodies. It's the temple of Christ, yes.